Hello, welcome to ACI Controls. We're back here in the fabrication shop, but there will be no fabrication today. Instead, I'm going to go over the assembly of a pump. We almost exclusively use Ampco pumps in the pasteurizers, and in the majority of cases, both the timing and boost pumps are their craft brew pumps, which is they call a CB+. So this video will only apply to that series. I will show the full assembly of the pump and the pump to the motor, and detail the seal installation, specifically for those whom are looking for info on how to change the seals in your existing pumps. To assemble this unit, you're going to need the following. This particular pump is a 316 180TC, so the wrench sizes and socket sizes are only going to pertain to this particular model. Everything else should be just real similar, depending on the size of the pump. So you're going to need your parts from Ampco, which is going to be the impeller, stub shaft, and the lock collar, seal kit, bolts to attach the pump to the C-face motor. You're going to need a 3/4 inch and 7/8 socket, some food grade Never Grease, some food grade Never Sees, and I also use some non-food grade Never Sees when I attach the pump to the motor, since that never sees any product. You're going to need a set of Allen wrenches, a ratchet, rubber mallet, 70 thousandths worth of shims, 7/16 wrench, and 2 pieces of soft pine to make sure there's no metal embedded in them any place, because you use those to press the seal in. And then the only other thing you're going to need is some time. So let's get started. So you start by getting the pump sections separated. I've already cheated a little bit and split them because it can be a real bear to come apart. I will delve into that later on as to how to prevent that in the future. We just got to pop the collar off of here and then remove the housing. And that's the part that the seal that loves to stick together. So you get this section pulled off of the main mounting base, and then proceed to remove this collar. Protects the motor shaft from people getting their hands in there. So over here in the motor, you won't need your key. You discard that. It actually, the stub shaft attaches with this pinch lock collar. And one thing, when you go to put this assembly together, you want to line up that split there with the split in the collar to get it fully pinched on there. So now you take the base, and I always set it so that this, which I believe is some kind of a hole in place to allow coolant to drop down into the seal. But I put that up at the top, and obviously that's your motor base down here. You got this collar or this. Saw your base such that this weep hole is up on top, and then you just take here's where I use the non-food grade Never Sees, because I just think it works better than the food grade, and this part is never going to see any kind of product, and I want to make sure that these motors can be easily removed if you ever have to pull them off in the future. Here's where the 3/4 inch socket comes into being. This would ultimately snug it all up. Here's one of the places I like to use the plastic hammer, even though I don't use the plastic part. So now you take your stub shaft and collar and power assembly and pop the impeller off of there. It's never, in the factory, it's never tightened down. And you gotta be careful because there is a rubber washer on the bottom of that. Set that aside, and then there's a key that's going to pop out of there. Then there's another washer down there that seals the impeller to that shaft. Make sure those are kept separate. Mix them up. You got your key coming out of there. Then here's the other spot I use the non-food grade never sees. Once again, because I just want to assure that if you ever have to pull this thing apart, it's going to come apart easily and you ain't going to fight it off. Not to sound conspiracy minded or anything, but there is something going on with why they make these brushes this length and the can that length. It's almost like they're trying to rip you off there, but maybe it's just me. But anyhow, I believe that's going to be the last spot I use this never sees of the non-food grade, and I get it right out of the way so I ain't mixing it up. And here's where you're going to have a little bit of difference between different pumps on wrench sizes. Just loosen that collar up a little bit. Now I'm going to put this collar on here and make sure I line up this cut in the stub shaft along with the cut in the collar into that keyway. Bring them down in there. A lot of times it fights you down in there. And I usually will bring it down part way and then temporarily lock it in there. Just enough to hold it in place. And then I'll work at setting in its height once I put it on top. Put this inner housing on top here. There is some lock tabs in the back there in a set. So then at this point what I'll do is I'll put this rubber seal back onto the stub shaft, put the impeller on without the key, put the nut on there without this washer, just hand snug that in place. Then you take your 70 thousandths worth of shims, drop it underneath there, and then I will take and lower the stub shaft assembly down until I hit that 70 thousandths, and then relock it in place. And you still want to make sure you got those slits, those slots still lined up right. Bring it down until you hit the 70 thousandths. I like to put that collar, split the difference between them two. And snug it up. And I usually do it just enough to hold it in place until I get the rest of the assembly done, and then I'll go back and finalize that. You want to make sure you got 70 thousandths all the way around there, from the impeller to this back of the housing. And then at that point, you can start getting involved with putting the seal in. So I pull this assembly back up and off of here. That seal, that rubber washer out of there, and still, once again, I always keep these things separate. So Ampco's CB Plus seal kit consists of several parts. there's a movable and a fixed part of the seal, and I believe there's a carbon face on there. So first of all, you don't want to touch that or damage it. It's very, very fragile. And so what I end up doing is there is a notch on the back of this seal, and I will put it down in the housing such that that notch faces down towards the ground, and I believe that's a drain, so anything that sneaks by there can sneak out the back of the housing. So what I'll end up doing is I will put some food grade grease or never sees on this O-ring. Like I said, making sure you don't touch that. Press that carefully press that into the housing and make sure it's flush. And then the next part of the seal that will go in will be this movable part, which also has a carbon face on it, and consists of an O-ring back in there that will get lubed up, this protecting ring on the O-ring, and then the spring goes in there to hold the tension on the whole seal assembly. So let me reposition the camera and I'll show that going in. So obviously I like to work on these in a vertical position. It's a little difficult to film, but I prefer to work on it, it's just so much easier. So like I alluded to, that notch, I make sure it faces the ground. And you very carefully drop that down in there. And here's where I use these two pieces of wood, and just make sure there's nothing on the back side of these things. And then ever so carefully and gently get on there and push it down evenly, and it should just snap in nice and smooth like that. And I like to push it in consistent like that with no tilting back and forth. Then after that, I'm going to want to put in the seal that goes between the impeller and the stub shaft. I like to put a little food grade grease or never sees on that. Drop that down in there, and then I've already went ahead and lubricated the O-ring that's down inside there under that stainless collar, and this just is there, that tab's just there to hold the spring. It doesn't really matter where that goes. And at this point, drop that down in there, being careful not to scratch anything up. And obviously make sure that this notch is facing up and the carbon side's touching the other side of that seal. Carefully press that in there. Use these little pieces of wood to set that down. And then at this point, it's probably best to get the little key did on this. I make sure I got some never sees on that. Get that installed. And then I never sees this shaft. Once again, a food grade only. I retired the non-food grade early on. These stupid brushes. Set the spring back in there, making sure that this little tab goes in that notch. Carefully set that in there. And make sure you got your seal down in there. And at this point, you can, if you want, you can put a little extra never sees on the inside of the impeller. Down in the key. Carefully slide that over there. Your key stays in. At this point, you're going to want to take and get some grease, some food grade grease on this impeller nut. And make sure you pay attention that this flat surface goes down to the impeller and the ridged edge goes up into that part of the nut. Down in there. I like to have grease on there so it slides around when it's going through, when you're spinning it down. And sometimes you gotta finagle finagle the key in place. Doesn't always fit in there all that well. Squeeze that down. And here's where the 7/8 socket comes in, at least on this particular model. Snug that up. Get that snugged up, and then I go through, and then this is where I like to go through and double check spacing on this impeller. Sometimes that moves, and make sure you get the 70,000 still in there. In this case, it seems like it's yeah, it held up pretty good. A little snug on that side, but that shouldn't be a problem. Those things are never exactly perfect. So once you drop the impeller down in there, you get the nut snugged down. Then here's where you're going to want to find a, I believe it's like about a 3/8 rod, and on the side over here. Over here on the side, there's this hole in the stub shaft. All you do is you stick a, it's probably like, I think it's like about a 3/8. Stick a 3/8 bar in there, or a piece of, or an Allen wrench, something like that. Use that to hold the shaft in place while you tighten down the impeller nut. So I usually just give it a couple of raps with the side of the plastic tipped hammer. Should be good to go. So once you get it snugged down, I take and put the shims back in there, make sure it clears. You're good to go. So now that's all been set in place, what I will do is I will give the final tightening down here on this lock collar. So earlier I alluded to an issue you can have with splitting this part of the housing off of this part of the housing. This seal ties together with this pretty well. So what I do to alleviate that problem is I will go through and just put a real thin layer of food grade grease around this seal. That allows me to put this assembly together and put the clamp on. And by the way, I also will, even though Ampco does generally put never sees on these things, I will just glob a bunch more on there, just fanatical about that kind of stuff. So I will go through and put the grease on there, get this approximate, snug it up, and then when I put it in the machine, it allows me to go through, since I'm building a piping in there, I want it nice and level, it will allow me to go through and put an inclinometer on these surfaces and tap everything in place so it's nice and square and plumb, and before I bring the pipes in. Just sometimes to sit here and figure out where that's got to be at this point is impossible. And if I don't put some grease on that and put it in the machine and try to move that around, it's miserable at best. So that it might be helpful when you put your pumps back together to put a little never sees on, little food grade never sees on there, food grade grease, just a real super thin layer, just enough to allow that to slide around. And then after that, once you get this put in place, clamped down, then all you got to do is just reassemble your cover, protect someone from putting their hands down in there or crap flying out, and you should be good to go. Hopefully this helps you out. Thanks for watching.